Okay, so we are continuing with ideologies, ideas and war and international system section of the course. This is the last class before the midterm, so whatever we do today is included in the midterm, okay? On Wednesday, we're going to have a review class, okay? So on Wednesday at 6:30, I think, for as long as you want. I don't really have a time limit on it, but I think we will be finished in half an hour or 50 minutes. We're going to do a review. I'll give you hints of what will be what will be on the exam, and also the exam review sheet is already online. Okay, I put it online a couple days ago. Someone reminded me to put it. Okay, thank you. Actually, yes, I was almost forgetting it. Okay, so I'll go back to social Darwinism. So I'm going to talk about social Darwinism, militarism, and the cult of the offensive today. And the reading for these is Stephen Van Avere's article. It's in your reader. And the first thing that you've learned about social Darwinism is the idea stems from Charles Darwin's survival of the fittest idea, and how nature selects organisms that will survive, that has the capacity, potential to survive. So not all organisms survive. The ones that are fit to the environment will. Okay, and then. With the thought begins with this biological explanation of survival of the fittest, but guys, thinkers such as Herbert Spencer and Sumner, they actually take that idea and they twist it, and they want to see who survives in the society. So they kind of apply that idea to the society. Who has the most potential to survive in the society? How do we improve the society? So war, in that kind of thinking, becomes an idea that is a good thing or a progressive thing. What does progressive mean?
That there's constant progress.
Okay. If you are a progressive person, what does that say about you? You're developing. How?
Not developing, but it's an ongoing cycle that doesn't stop. So it's always.
Okay, so development might be part of it. How? Yes.
It also implies that the development is for the better. Of course, time flows, but in the future, you think it will be better than that.
Okay, so there's the idea of developing into a better future, right? Yes. Perpetual advancement. You've been thinking about this. Okay, perpetual advancement. Well, you actually try to improve your circumstances. You try to improve your potential. Okay, so in the case, in the idea of war being progressive, war is portrayed as an idea that, as a phenomenon that will improve the society. It will improve the society how? For what reason? What happens in wars that will improve the society? Let me see a lot of hands. Let me see a lot of hands from different people. Okay, why do you think that war can... We talked so much about destruction of war. So how come these guys think that war is maybe progressive? Okay.
I think the actually process of the European integration is what the answer is in here. Namely, people learn lessons and they try to prevent against such devastating actions.
Okay.
And hurting themselves.
So it actually refers to the learning process. Remember Hendrik Sprout? He said in previous classes we talked about the survival of the state, and he said, well, the other entities looked at the state and they imitated the nation state and how nation state progressed. Okay, so as nation states won wars, as they prospered, as they became the mode of political organization in the world, other units such as city-states and city leagues started imitating nation-states. Now, think of the same idea, the idea of learning. Okay, states learn, societies learn. So war is progressive because societies will learn from their experiences. So when they got into wars such as the world wars, they might learn from that experience and try to prevent it. But there's another thing in this that's really important. War is progressive because in wars, people, what happens to people? Die. Who dies from that perspective? The weak ones die in wars in this perspective. So from a social Darwinist perspective, the weak ones are eliminated in wars. That's why it's progressive, because as the weaks die, the stronger ones in wars will survive, and as the stronger ones survive, they will reproduce and giving way to more strong people in the society. So winners, in other words, are the focus of the social Darwinist ideology, okay? The losers of wars are not those that we should be concerned about. Well, you might find this line of thinking a little cold, but at the same time, okay, at the same time, all right. After this technology issue that we had to suffer, we're continuing. Now, we were saying that war is progressive according to social Darwinism. And it's progressive because war actually eliminates the weak ones, and all we have left is the strong ones. And the strong ones are supposed to multiply, they're supposed to reproduce, and as a result, they're going to dominate the society. And remember the nice traits that we were mentioning? Temperance, frugality, industriousness. So hardworking people, but at the same time modest in their action, and people that are quite careful with their spendings. These will be the types of people that are supposed to survive, and then they're supposed to make the society a more progressive and better society. War in this equation is helping, okay? It's helping because it's a mechanism of elimination. Now, I have some interesting quotes here. Without wars, inferior or decaying races would easily choke the growth of healthy budding elements. Now, this sounds quite brutal. Of course, it comes from a general, but at the same time, I want you to remember that social Darwinism is quite common in all of Europe and also in North America at the time, okay? So we don't actually think of social Darwinism a thing of the Germans. We actually have to think that there are several countries that subscribe to that idea. Even in Turkey, there are ideas of the superiority of the Turkish race. So the delusions about one race dominating another or being superior to another is the main characteristic of social Darwinist ideology. Okay, and what you should notice here is the use of words, decaying. So decaying means weak, right? It's already going to decay and be eliminated sooner or later. That's why in a war, those who are weak of decaying races will lose. While in the context of Second World War, who are those decaying races that this German general might be referring to? The Jews and communists. Okay, communism is not, you know, a race, but who are the the Slavs, right? So there are several races that are more inferior than others, and Jews and Slavs are one of those according to the Second World War thinking. Now, there's also a mention of civilization versus barbarism. I want you to consider that. At the time, we're actually talking about white races' supremacy over other races. And within the white race, we're talking about inferior races, white races to superior white races, okay? So there are all kinds of stratification of races in this way of thinking. And the way you define inferior is by referring to barbaric acts. And the way you refer to civilization is through actions such as education and technology and economy and more developed economy, education, etc. Okay? So the less educated, the less developed in terms of economic resources are deemed more inferior, okay, in social Darwinism. And the path of progress is actually a result, a consequence of the wreckage of nations. In other words, they will be eliminated, and those who are not will actually bring the civilization of men further. Now, the second characteristic is war is inevitable. What's inevitable? What? You can't avoid wars, okay? Wars are inevitable. You can't avoid them. You can't prevent them. They will happen, okay? So here, I picked a quotation from not a German general, but this time an American general. And he says, you know, a few idealists may have visions that with advancing civilization, war and its dreaded horrors will cease, will end. However, human nature will not change, he says. So he's connecting war and fighting between people to human nature. Which international relations theory that we've learned in this class? Okay, realism would explain how, classical realism would explain how human nature cannot really be changed, and in an environment where everyone is on their own, everyone is trying to survive, we actually are talking about constant struggle, okay? And struggle leads to conflict. Conflict cannot be avoided, is quite inevitable. Armed strike, according to this way of thinking, will not be eliminated, disappear from the earth, okay? If there's men, there's conflict, there's war. That's the mentality. And then the third one is something that we're already familiar with. Remember, I've told you that if I sow the seeds of nationalism in this classroom, you guys will be willing to die for me, your queen, okay? And in that case, I was going to tell you that there's this war, and this war is so important. You know, the threat is so huge. And in a situation like that, I would try to get the society together. I would get you together. We call this the rally around the flag effect, okay? So according to social Darwinist thinking, war gets together the strong gets together the society, and the strong ones in the society will be even stronger. It will bring the best out of every man. Okay, so that's another thing that is important here. So you might think that you're weak, but at times of war, the best in you will come out, and you will actually discover your own strength. Okay, and that's part of the social Darwinist thinking. So the love, the friendliness, and the strength. Okay. So actually, we're talking about love. We're talking about friendliness. And that why are the social Darwinists emphasizing these notions of love and friendliness coming out at times of war? Why would they do that? Why would they base their way of thinking in these notions? Do you guys value love? Okay, so most people do. Because most people value things like love and friendship, well, if you emphasize in your ideology that how love will increase and friendship will increase and it will be stronger at times of war, then you're actually very likely to get more people believe in your ideology. Okay, so pointing to the strength of love and friendliness is, in that sense, quite important in social Darwinism. The fourth, now, women in the class might be offended, but sorry, social Darwinism believes that men actually are strong, and men actually need some hardship, like war, so that the best out of men will come about. And I have an interesting example from Mahatma Gandhi, and he is a pacifist. He's very much against war and conflict. So he once said, "War does one good thing. It drives away fear and brings bravery to the surface." Now imagine someone who believes in anti-war ideas. Well, actually, probably the most important person, the most important pacifist in the world, is saying that even war has one good side to it. And that is actually fear will be driven away and bravery will come out. So there's the assumption, there's one assumption here. What's that assumption in this fourth item? What do they assume? Redu.
I guess that these male characteristics are being strengthened.
What is the assumption of male characteristic? What's the most important male characteristic that's assumed here?
Egoism?
Bravery. Okay. So the most important thing here is that men should be masculine and they should be brave. So there's the assumption that at times of war, even men who don't feel that strong and that brave will feel brave. Okay? So it's actually, the ideology is actually targeting the cavemen inside every man, and it makes you feel that, okay, if I fight, I'm more of a man. If I don't fight, I'm not a man. So it's stereotyping. Okay, it's quite typical of stereotyping men versus women and not fighting and being at home and, you know, caring for the home, and the children is women's role, and the role of man is to actually go out and fight outside, bring the food, right? You know, just kill and provide for the home and for the women. That actually is quite annoying from a feminist perspective, feminist international relations perspective. That's quite annoying because there are the set roles of men and women, and men are portrayed in this heroic way. But at the same time, that is the very strength of social Darwinism. Is there any guys in this classroom who wouldn't be, you know, kind of happy if I said, "Oh, you're so brave. You know, I can't believe how brave you are," because it kind of makes you feel better. And usually, if you say that to a woman, the women will also be quite happy, you know, if you say that you're brave. But most often, the men will actually think that bravery is a man's, you know, man's thing. So that's why guys, social Darwinism was very popular in the world, and there are still subscribers to it. Like I said, I think I said in last class, just Google it. There's still, websites where you will see that there are people who believe in supremacy of some societies over others. There's racism everywhere. So the strength of the ideology comes from its speaking to the hearts of men, per se. Okay? So the last one follows from the fifth item. Manhood marks the height of physical vigor. The height of physical vigor. So it actually refers to physical power, muscle power. So how strong you are defines your manlyhood. Okay? So a man is supposed to be strong, kind of thinking is portrayed here. Militant success of a nation marks the zenith of its physical greatness. So being a soldier is equal to being a man in that sense. And if you are a good soldier, you are a good man. Okay, that's the assumption in the ideology. Okay, now social Darwinism, like I said, is an ideology that is based on the human, man's actually nature and human nature, and masculinity is quite a part of social Darwinism. Now I'm going to tell you that the deadliest combination is to have social Darwinism and cult of the offensive together. Next class, I will add militarism to that. When you have three of these, that becomes quite a deadly combination. And we actually see the deadly combination before the First World War as well. Not only the Second World War. Okay? So these three ideologies together have caused both world wars. Thankfully, after the world wars, we have not seen these three together causing another, but who knows, with the latest developments on Iran and Iran's threat to Turkey. Have you been watching the news? Okay, we'll talk about that later. Now, according to Stephen Manavera, there is this unshakable belief, almost like a religious belief, that says, if I attack first and offend you, if I catch you unprepared, I'm going to win. And the war will be really short. It will be fast. I'll get in, attack you, get out, and win the war. So, well, we're not really actually talking about that in this ideology yet, because at this point, there isn't even much thinking or much evaluation of empirical data. Now, when you look at the history of wars, what you actually see is most wars are not short. In most wars, the offensive did not work. And most wars, after you attack, becomes a defensive war. So the belief that I'll offend and I'll win in a short time is almost like a religious belief. You can't prove it, but people keep believing it. Okay? That's why it says unshakable belief that offensive forces always have an advantage over defensive forces. Well, the thing is, the data doesn't support that belief, okay? So there is not really much of an empirical evidence that the offensive will always win. And like I said, the First World War is a great example of it, and the Second World War. The one that offenses first actually does not win, and both sides will become more or less defensive after a while. But the funny thing is, this belief doesn't change. People keep believing it. There's data against it, but there's still people and generals and statesmen who believe that attack is the best defense. And that is quite a consequence of how realism actually has dominated world politics for a very long time. Because the idea is quite irrational, actually. When I attack, I'll always win kind of thinking is quite irrational, but still it's there. People keep believing it. That's why it's called the cult. Let's take a break and then I'll come back. Spiritual advancement. Well, you actually try to improve your circumstances. You try to improve your potential. Okay, so in the case, in the idea of war being progressive, war is portrayed as an idea that, as a phenomenon that will improve the society. It will improve the society how? For what reason? What happens in wars that will improve the society? Let me see a lot of hands. Let me see a lot of hands from different people. Okay, why do you think that war can, we talked so much about destruction of war. So how okay, so we are continuing with ideologies, ideas and war and international system section of the course. This is the last class before the midterm. So whatever we do today is included in the midterm, okay? On Wednesday, we're going to have a review class, okay? So on Wednesday at 6:30, I think, for as long as you want. I don't really have a time limit on it, but I think we will be finished in half an hour or 50 minutes. We're going to do a review. I'll give you hints of what will be what will be on the exam, and also the exam review sheet is already online. Okay, I put it online a couple days ago. Someone reminded me to put it. Okay, thank you. Actually, yes, I was almost forgetting it. Okay, so I'll go back to social Darwinism. So I'm going to talk about social Darwinism, militarism, and the cult of the offensive today. And the reading for these is Stephen Van Avere's article. It's in your reader. And the first thing that you've learned about social Darwinism is the idea stems from Charles Darwin's survival of the fittest idea, and how nature is a good thing or a progressive thing. What does progressive mean?
That there's constant progress.
Okay, if you are a progressive person, what does that say about you? You're developing. How?
Not developing, but it's an ongoing cycle that doesn't stop. So it's always.
Okay, so development might be part of it. How? Yes.
It also implies that the development is for the better. Like, of course, time flows, but in the future, you think it will be better than that.
Okay, so there's the idea of developing into a better future, right? Yes. Perpetual advancement. You've been thinking about this. Okay. Perpetual organisms that will survive, that has the capacity, potential to survive. So not all organisms survive. The ones that are fit to the environment will, okay? And then with the thought begins with this biological explanation of survival of the fittest, but guys, thinkers such as Herbert Spencer and Sumner, they actually take that idea and they twist it, and they want to see who survives in the society. So they kind of apply that idea to the society. Who has the most potential to survive in the society? How do we improve the society. So war, in that kind of thinking, becomes an idea that